In the heart of a quiet town, there stood an old-fashioned toy store, Toyland Treasures. For years it had been a place of joy and wonder, where children would press their faces against the glass windows, gazing in awe at the colorful displays of dolls, train sets, and stuffed animals. The store, with its creaky wooden floors and shelves overflowing with toys, was a relic of a bygone era, a place where magic seemed to linger in the air. But as time passed, the store fell into disrepair, its once lively atmosphere replaced by an eerie stillness. The owner, Mr. Abner, was a reclusive old man who had inherited the store from his father. He was a solitary figure, rarely seen outside the store, and rumors swirled around him. Some said he spoke to the toys as if they were alive, while others whispered that the store was cursed. But no one paid much attention to the gossip until the strange occurrences began. It started small. Customers would find toys in places they hadn't left them, or hear faint whispers when the store was empty. The dolls seemed to move on their own, their glassy eyes following people around the room. The train sets would start running without being wound up, chugging along the tracks with an almost sinister determination. But the most disturbing thing was the laughter, soft, childlike giggles that echoed through the store long after closing time. One evening, as Mr. Abner was preparing to lock up, he heard the familiar sound of a music box playing. But he hadn't wound any of the music boxes, and the sound was coming from the basement, a place he had avoided for years. The basement was a dark, musty room, filled with old, forgotten toys and memories best left undisturbed. But the music was growing louder, its haunting melody beckoning him closer. With a sense of dread settling in his chest, Mr. Abner descended the narrow stairs to the basement. The air was thick with dust, and the only light came from a single flickering bulb hanging from the ceiling. The music led him to an old ornate chest, hidden away in the corner. His hands trembled as he opened the chest, revealing a collection of toys, each one more sinister than the last. There were marionettes with twisted, grinning faces, dolls with hollow eyes, and wind-up soldiers with chipped paint and rusted gears. But at the very bottom of the chest was a single, unassuming toy, a small wooden puppet. As Mr. Abner lifted the puppet from the chest, the music box stopped, plunging the basement into an oppressive silence. The puppet's eyes, painted a bright, unnatural blue, seemed to stare right through him. It was then that he felt it, the presence. It was cold, malevolent, and it filled the room with an overwhelming sense of dread. The toys in the basement began to twitch and move, as if responding to the presence. They turned their heads towards Mr. Abner, their eyes glinting in the dim light. Suddenly, the puppet's mouth moved, creaking open to speak in a voice that was not its own. "The game begins now, Abner. Will you play?" Before Mr. Abner could react, the basement door slammed shut and the toys sprang to life. The marionettes danced on their strings, their wooden limbs clacking together in a grotesque parody of joy. The dolls crawled across the floor, their tiny hands reaching out with malicious intent. The wind-up soldiers marched in formation, their rusty bayonets glinting menacingly. The puppet, now perched on Mr. Abner's shoulder, whispered commands into his ear, directing the toys in their twisted game. Desperate to escape, Mr. Abner fought his way through the sea of toys, but they were relentless. They tugged at his clothes, nipped at his heels, and clawed at his skin. Every step he took was met with resistance, as if the very air in the basement had turned against him. The sinister presence loomed over him, growing stronger with each passing moment, feeding off his fear. Just as he reached the door, something caught his foot, sending him crashing to the ground. The puppet, still clinging to his shoulder, laughed, a cold, mirthless sound that echoed in the darkness. "You can't leave, Abner," it hissed. "You belong to us now." But as the toys closed in, ready to claim him, a sudden realization struck Mr. Abner. The presence in the basement wasn't just a malevolent spirit. It was the ghost of his younger brother, Jacob, who had died tragically many years ago. Jacob had always loved playing with the toys in the store, but one day he had fallen down the basement stairs, his life cut short by the very toys he cherished. Overcome with grief and guilt, Mr. Abner had buried the memory deep within his mind, locking it away along with the toys that had caused his brother's death. But Jacob's spirit had never left. It had lingered in the basement, growing bitter and vengeful, until it found a way to exact its revenge. The toys had become his instruments, twisted by his anger and sorrow into something monstrous. With tears streaming down his face, Mr. Abner pleaded with his brother's spirit, begging for forgiveness. He explained that the accident had haunted him for years, that he had never meant for Jacob to be hurt. For a moment, the toys hesitated, their movements slowing as the presence seemed to consider his words, but the puppet's grip tightened on his shoulder, and its voice turned cold. "It's too late for apologies, Abner. The game must be played to the end." In a final desperate act, Mr. Abner grabbed the puppet and threw it into the chest, slamming the lid shut. The toys froze in place, their lifeless forms crumpling to the ground as the presence was sealed away once more. The basement door creaked open, and Mr. Abner stumbled out, gasping for air as the cold, malevolent energy dissipated. But the store was never the same. The toys remained still, but their eyes seemed to follow anyone who entered. The basement was boarded up, its secrets hidden away once more, but the whispers never truly ceased. And Mr. Abner, forever haunted by the events of that night, would often hear the faint haunting melody of the music box in his dreams, a reminder that the game, though paused, was not truly over. For in the darkness of the basement, the chest remained, and the presence within waited patiently for the next player to arrive.